I still remember the exact moment the lawyer looked up from the crisp white pages and delivered the words that shattered my world. My hands were folded neatly on the polished oak table, but inside I was trembling. The room smelled of old leather chairs and fresh coffee, the kind of scent that should feel comforting but suddenly made my stomach twist. "My father's last will and testament has been updated," he said in that calm, detached voice lawyers use when they know they're about to break someone's heart. "Emma's name has been completely removed. No inheritance, no provisions, nothing. Emma, my daughter. The little girl I had chosen with every beat of my heart after years of longing and quiet disappointment. Not blood," the lawyer explained gently, as if that single fact erased 11 years of love, laughter, and late-night hugs. My father had been very clear in his final months: only real family would inherit what he left behind. I sat there frozen, the words echoing in my ears like a distant thunderclap. How do you breathe when the man who raised you decides that the child you raised isn't worthy of his legacy? How do you process the idea that love, the kind I poured into both of them, could be crossed out with a pen stroke? My name is Sophia Reynolds. I'm 38 years old, and for most of my life I thought I understood what family meant. I thought I had built something unbreakable with my father. After my mother passed away when I was 23, it was just the two of us. I stepped up without hesitation. I cooked his favorite meals, drove him to every doctor's appointment, and sat by his bedside during those long, scary nights when his health started to fail. He called me his rock, his good girl, and I believed him. When I turned 32, something inside me shifted. The dream of holding my own baby had faded into quiet acceptance after years of tests, treatments, and heartbreaking negatives. Adoption wasn't my backup plan, it became my chosen path. Emma came into my life when she was 6. She was small for her age, with big brown eyes that carried shadows no child should ever know. Her biological family situation had been painful and complicated, but the moment I met her, I felt it, that deep, instinctive pull. She was mine. The first few months were tender and terrifying. Emma barely spoke. She would sit on the edge of the couch, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, watching me with cautious hope. I remember one rainy evening, I made hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, the way my mom used to do for me. I set the mug in front of her and said softly, "You don't have to drink it if you don't want to. But I'm here if you ever want to talk." She looked up at me, those big eyes searching my face, and whispered, "Are you going to send me back?" My heart cracked right there. I knelt down so we were eye level and took her small hands in mine. "Never, sweetheart, this is your home now. You and me, we're a team." Over time, the walls came down. She started calling me Mom in the softest voice, like she was testing how the word felt on her tongue. I cried in the shower that night, overwhelmed with gratitude. I had a daughter. A real, beautiful, resilient daughter. My father's reaction was careful at first. When I brought Emma home for the first time, he stood in the doorway of our old apartment, looking at her with polite curiosity. "Well, she seems like a quiet little thing," he said, patting her head awkwardly. "Let's see how this goes." I swallowed my disappointment and told myself he just needed time. After all, he was getting older, his arthritis was acting up, and change had never come easily to him. But I was determined. I wanted us to be a family, a real one, stitched together by choice and care, not just blood. A year later, I made the biggest decision of my adult life. I had been saving aggressively for my job as a senior accountant. Long hours, skipped vacations, careful budgeting, every sacrifice felt worth it when I found the perfect house on Maplewood Lane. It was a charming 2-story home with a wide front porch, white shutters, and a backyard big enough for a swing set and summer picnics. The price was fair, the neighborhood safe, and best of all, it had space for all three of us. I bought it outright with my own money. Every penny came from me, no loans from Dad, no co-signing. The deed was in my name alone. I remember standing in the empty living room on closing day, sunlight streaming through the windows, and feeling a surge of pride I hadn't felt in years. This was mine. Our future, when Dad's health took another dip, it felt natural to invite him to move in. "It'll be easier for me to take care of you here," I told him over coffee one morning. Emma loves having you around, and the house has a ground floor bedroom that's perfect. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right, Soph. If you're sure. From that day forward, the house on Maplewood Lane became our world. Neighbors started calling it the Reynolds family home. Dad would sit on the porch in his favorite rocking chair, watching the world go by. Emma would run through the backyard, her laughter filling the air like music. I cooked Sunday dinners, roast chicken with garlic potatoes the way Mom taught me. We felt like a unit. A little imperfect, but ours. I remember one crisp autumn afternoon about 3 years after we all moved in. Emma was 9, full of energy and starting to bloom. She had just come home from school with a drawing she made in art class, a stick figure family standing in front of a house that looked exactly like ours. Dad was on the porch, reading his newspaper. "Look, Grandpa," she said, holding it up proudly. "That's you, me, and Mom." Dad lowered the paper and studied the drawing for a long moment. Then he smiled, that warm, crinkly-eyed smile I had grown up loving. "That's real nice, kiddo, you even got my hat right." Emma beamed and climbed onto his lap without hesitation. He wrapped an arm around her and said, "You know, family isn't always who you're born with. Sometimes it's who shows up every single day." I was standing in the doorway with a tray of lemonade, and those words wrapped around my heart like a blanket. I stepped out and joined them, handing Dad his glass. "I'm so glad you feel that way, Dad. It means everything to hear you say it." He looked at me then, his eyes soft. "You've done good, Sophia. Real good." That evening, after Emma was tucked in, Dad and I sat on the porch swing together, the chains creaking softly in the cool night air. Fireflies danced in the backyard. He reached over and squeezed my hand. "I wasn't sure about all this at first," he admitted quietly, "adoption and everything. But seeing how happy she makes you and how she lights up this old house, I think it was the right choice." Tears stung my eyes. "Thank you, Dad." I needed to hear that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of silence that only comes after years of shared history. I thought in that moment that we had finally become the family I had always dreamed of. No more hesitation, no more careful distance, just love. But life has a way of planting small seeds of doubt that you don't notice until they grow into something you can't ignore. It started subtly in the last 2 years of Dad's life. His health was declining faster, more doctor visits, more medications, more tired afternoons where he would nap in his chair instead of joining us for games. A new private nurse named Diane started coming 3 times a week. She was efficient, polite, and seemed genuinely caring. I was grateful for the extra help, then little comments began slipping in. One evening, while I was washing dishes after dinner, I overheard Dad talking to Diane in the living room. His voice was low, but the words carried. "Blood is blood, you know. At the end of the day, that's what matters most." Diane murmured something sympathetic. I paused, dishcloth in hand, telling myself I had misheard, but the seed was planted. Another time, during a family dinner, Emma was excitedly telling Dad about her school play. She wanted him to come watch her as the lead tree in the forest scene, her first big role. Dad smiled, but there was a distant look in his eyes. "That sounds nice, Emma, but you know, real family traditions are important too. Maybe we should think about keeping some things just for the original line." Emma's smile faltered for a second, but she recovered quickly. "But I'm your granddaughter, Grandpa." He patted her hand. "Of course you are, kiddo." I laughed it off later when I told Emma goodnight. "Grandpa's just old-fashioned sometimes. He loves you, honey." But inside, a quiet unease began to grow. I pushed it down. Dad had been there through so much: my mother's illness, my struggles with infertility, the adoption process. He had held me when I cried after failed treatments. Surely those small comments were just the ramblings of a tired old man. I focused on the good moments instead, like the summer when Emma turned 10. We threw a backyard party with balloons, a homemade cake, and water balloons. Dad sat under the shade of the big oak tree, watching Emma run around with her friends. At one point, he called her over and gave her a small silver locket that had belonged to my grandmother. "This was your great-grandma's," he said, fastening it around her neck. "She'd want you to have it." Emma's eyes widened with wonder. Thank you, Grandpa. I'll take care of it forever. I captured the moment on my phone, the three of us smiling together, the locket glinting in the sunlight. That photo still sits on my nightstand. It used to make me smile. Now it makes my chest ache with a different kind of pain. As Dad's condition worsened, I poured even more of myself into caring for him. I reduced my hours at work, handled all the medical paperwork, and made sure Emma never felt pushed aside. We would have quiet evenings where the three of us watched old movies together. Dad loved westerns. Emma would cuddle up between us on the couch, her head eventually resting on his shoulder as she drifted off. One night, during a particularly emotional scene in an old film, Dad turned to me and said, "You know, Sophia, when I'm gone, I want you to remember what really matters. Legacy. Blood. The things that last." I nodded, assuming he meant the values he had taught me: kindness, hard work, family, loyalty. "I will, Dad, will keep making you proud." He smiled faintly and closed his eyes. Those were the moments I held on to, the tender ones, the ones that made me believe our bond was unbreakable. But looking back now, I can see the cracks I ignored. The way Diane would sometimes linger after her shifts, talking with Dad in hushed tones. The way he started keeping certain papers locked in his desk drawer. The occasional phone calls from distant relatives, my cousin Marcus especially, that seemed to happen more frequently in his final months. Marcus had never been close to us. He lived 2 states away and only visited when he needed something. Yet in the last year, he started showing up more often, bringing gifts and spending long afternoons with Dad. I welcomed it at the time. It's good for Dad to have more family around, I told myself. Emma noticed the shift too, in her quiet way. One afternoon she asked me, "Mom, does Grandpa still like me as much as before?" I pulled her into a hug. "Of course he does, baby, he's just tired." "Grown-ups get tired sometimes." She nodded, but I saw the doubt flicker across her face. I threw myself into creating more beautiful memories. We planted a small vegetable garden together: tomatoes, cucumbers, and Emma's favorite strawberries. Dad supervised from his chair, giving instructions like the old gardener he once was. Emma's hands got covered in dirt, and her laughter rang out every time she found a ripe tomato. "Look, Grandpa. This one's for you." He would eat it right there, juice running down his chin, and declare it the best tomato he'd ever tasted. In those moments, everything felt right again. Christmas that last year was magical. We decorated the tree as a family. Emma hung the silver locket ornament she had made from the one Dad gave her. Dad sat by the fireplace, wrapped in a blanket, watching us with what I thought was contentment. On Christmas morning, he gave Emma a new book set and told her, "Keep reading, kiddo. Stories are how we remember who we are." I hugged him tightly that day. "Thank you for being part of this, Dad, for accepting us." He patted my back. "You're my daughter, Sophia." That will never change. Those words should have comforted me. Instead, they echo now with a hollow ring. The final months were the hardest. Dad's energy faded. He spent more time in bed or in his chair, staring out the window at the backyard we had all cherished. Diane was there almost daily. Marcus visited twice in 1 month. I felt stretched thin, but I kept smiling for Emma's sake. She was 11 now, old enough to sense the tension but still young enough to hope everything would be okay. The night before Dad passed, I sat by his bedside, holding his hand. The room was dimly lit by a small lamp. Emma had already said goodnight and gone to sleep. "I love you, Dad," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." His eyes fluttered open briefly. "Love you too, Soph. Take care of what's yours." I thought he meant the house, the memories, us. He slipped away peacefully in his sleep the next morning. The funeral was a blur of flowers, condolences, and quiet tears. Emma held my hand the entire time, her small fingers gripping mine like a lifeline. Marcus stood on the other side, looking solemn but saying little. Diane hovered nearby, offering tissues and soft words. After the service, people told me what a wonderful daughter I had been, how proud Dad must have been. I nodded and thanked them, but inside I felt a growing emptiness. 2 weeks later, I walked into the lawyer's office, expecting to hear about final arrangements and perhaps a few sentimental bequests. Instead, I heard the words that would upend everything I believed about my father, about family, and about the home we had built together. I left that office in a fog, the gray sky pressing down on me. Emma was waiting at home, excited to hear stories about Grandpa's gifts and what he might have left for her. How could I explain that the man she adored had decided she didn't belong in his final wishes? That night, after tucking her in and promising her the world was still safe, I sat alone in the dark kitchen of the house I had bought with my own hands 10 years earlier. The house everyone assumed was Dad's, the house that had become our sanctuary. I whispered into the silence, "What did we do wrong?" Tears slipped down my cheeks as memories flooded in, the porch swings, the garden, the locket, the Christmas lights. The quiet affirmations of love that now felt stained. But what I didn't know that day would change everything I thought I knew about him. The days after the will reading blurred into a heavy fog of disbelief and quiet devastation. I drove home from the lawyer's office with trembling hands on the steering wheel, the gray sky mirroring the storm inside me. Every red light felt like an eternity. When I finally pulled into the driveway of the house on Maplewood Lane, the house I had bought and paid for with my own sweat and sacrifice 10 years earlier, I sat there for a long time. Engine idling, staring at the front porch where so many happy memories had been made. How was I supposed to walk inside and face Emma with this new, ugly truth? She was only 11. She still believed Grandpa had loved her the way she loved him. I couldn't bear to watch that belief crumble in her eyes. I turned off the car and took a deep breath. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and the faint sweetness of the strawberry plants we had grown together. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of the betrayal. My father, the man I had cared for, cooked for, laughed with, and defended, had looked at my daughter and decided she was not worthy, not family, not deserving of even a single keepsake from the life we had built. When I stepped through the front door, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework. Her dark curls fell over her face as she concentrated on a math problem. The silver locket Dad had given her still hung around her neck, catching the afternoon light. "Mom, you're home," she said brightly, looking up with that hopeful smile that always melted me. "What did the lawyer say? Did Grandpa leave me anything special?" My throat tightened so sharply I could barely speak. I set my bag down slowly and walked over to her, pulling out a chair so I could sit at her level. I took her small hands in mine, feeling the warmth of her skin, the faint ink stains from her pen. "Sweetheart, Grandpa's will was a little complicated," I began, choosing my words carefully. "He was very sick at the end, and sometimes when people get older and scared, they make choices that don't feel right to the rest of us." Emma's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? Didn't he leave me the locket or something?" I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. "The locket is yours, baby. He gave it to you while he was still here, and no one can take that away. But he didn't include you in the official papers. He said only blood family could inherit things." The words hung in the air between us like broken glass. Emma stared at me for a long moment, her big brown eyes searching my face for any sign that this was a joke or a misunderstanding. Then her lower lip trembled. "But I'm his granddaughter," she whispered. "He said family isn't always blood. He told me that on the porch. Remember?" "I remember," I said softly, pulling her into my arms. She buried her face in my shoulder and I felt her small body shake with silent sobs. "I remember every word, sweetheart, and I'm so sorry." "I'm so sorry." We sat like that for what felt like hours, mother and daughter holding each other while the house that was supposed to be our safe haven suddenly felt too big and too empty. Inside, my heart was fracturing into pieces I didn't know how to put back together. How could the man who once rocked her to sleep on that very porch swing decide she was disposable? How could he erase her so cleanly, as if the last 11 years meant nothing? That night, after Emma finally cried herself to sleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, I sat alone in the living room with the lights off. The silence pressed in on me. Memories flooded back in waves, Dad teaching Emma how to tie her shoes, the two of them planting tomatoes side by side. The Christmas when he called her my girl, each recollection now carried a sharp edge of doubt. Had he been pretending all along? Had I been blind to the truth because I wanted so desperately for us to be a real family? The anger came slowly at first, like a low simmer. Then it built hot and unrelenting. I wasn't just grieving my father anymore, I was grieving the version of him I had loved and trusted. The version who had looked at my chosen daughter and seen family. That version, it seemed, had only existed in my hopeful imagination. In the weeks that followed, practical matters made everything worse. My cousin Marcus started calling almost daily. At first his tone was syrupy sweet, laced with fake sympathy. "Sophia, I know this is hard. Dad was getting old and confused toward the end, but we should sit down like adults and figure out how to handle the estate. The house needs maintenance and selling it could benefit everyone." Benefit everyone, the words made my skin crawl. He spoke as if Emma and I were already outsiders, as if the home I had bought a decade ago was never truly mine to begin with. One afternoon he showed up unannounced, Diane, Dad's private nurse, trailing behind him like a shadow. They stood on the front porch, the same porch where Dad and Emma once read books together. Marcus wore a crisp button-down shirt, looking every bit the confident heir he now believed he was. Diane offered me a small, pitying smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sophia, we don't want this to be ugly," Marcus said, leaning against the railing. "The will is clear. The house, the savings, everything goes to blood relatives. You had a good run taking care of Uncle, but now it's time to move forward. Maybe you and the girl can find a nice apartment nearby." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, feeling the weight of every sacrifice I had made for my father. Long nights at the hospital. Giving up promotions at work, pouring my savings into making this house comfortable for all of us. And for what? So they could sweep in and claim it like vultures. "This house isn't part of the estate the way you think," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. Marcus laughed softly as if I were being naive. "Come on, Sophia. Everyone knew it was Uncle's house. You let him live here, it's only fair we settle things properly." Diane nodded in agreement. "Your father mentioned several times how much the place meant to him as his legacy. He wanted it kept in the family, the real family." The phrase real family landed like a slap. I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept my composure. Inside, something hardened. A quiet resolve began to take root beneath the pain. I wouldn't let them see me break, not yet. After they left, I went upstairs to Dad's old room. The air still carried a faint trace of his aftershave. I started going through his drawers and papers with careful hands. That's when the deeper layers of betrayal began to reveal themselves. I found old text messages saved on his backup phone. Conversations with Diane where he complained about starting fresh with a clean bloodline. He wrote that he regretted letting me bring a stranger into the family. He worried Emma would one day claim what wasn't hers. There were emails with Marcus too, planning discussions about selling the house quickly and splitting the profits once I was handled. Each word felt like another knife. I sat on the edge of the bed, papers trembling in my hands, and let the tears fall freely. How long had this been going on behind my back? While I was changing his bedding, cooking his meals, and reassuring Emma that she was loved, my father had been quietly rewriting our story, erasing the daughter I chose because she didn't carry his blood. The helplessness was crushing. I spent nights pacing the kitchen, replaying every conversation, every tender moment, searching for signs I had missed. Had I been a fool for believing love could overcome prejudice? Had my devotion blinded me to his true feelings? Emma sensed the shift in me. She became quieter, clinging to me more often. One evening she asked, "Mom, are we going to lose the house? Is that why Marcus keeps coming?" I knelt down and cupped her face gently. "No, baby, this house is ours. I bought it long before Grandpa moved in. No one can take it from us. I promise I will protect us." She nodded, but the uncertainty lingered in her eyes. Seeing her doubt hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. I realized then that my pain wasn't just about me, it was about shielding my daughter from feeling unwanted and unworthy. As the weeks turned into months, the anger began to transform. It stopped being a wild, chaotic fire and started becoming something sharper, more focused. I started gathering documents late at night after Emma was asleep. The original purchase papers for the house, mortgage statements showing every payment made from my account, property tax records. The clear title deed that had never once listed my father's name. 10 years of proof that this home had always belonged to me, not him. I met with my own lawyer in secret. She reviewed everything carefully and confirmed what I already suspected. The house was never part of Dad's estate. It couldn't be transferred or sold because it had never been his to give. My father and Marcus had simply assumed it was, an assumption I had never corrected because I never imagined they would turn on us. That discovery became my quiet anchor. While Marcus and Diane made plans to list the house and divide the imagined fortune, I held on to the truth like a shield. I didn't confront them immediately. I let them talk, let them reveal more of their greed, let the suspense build inside me like a slow-burning fuse. One crisp evening, Marcus showed up again, this time with official-looking papers in his hand. Diane waited in the car, watching from the driveway. "We've spoken to our attorney," he said, stepping onto the porch without invitation. "It's time to start the process. You've had enough time to grieve. The house needs to be appraised and prepared for sale. We can be fair, maybe give you a small relocation fee for all your years of caregiving." I looked at him for a long moment, seeing not just my cousin, but the embodiment of everything my father had chosen over us in the end. The betrayal felt complete now, exposed, raw, and undeniable. "Actually," I said calmly, my voice carrying a new strength I hadn't felt in weeks, "there's something important you both need to understand." The air between us grew thick with tension. For the first time since the will reading, I didn't feel helpless. I felt the shift happening inside me, from broken daughter to a mother ready to fight for what was truly hers. Until everything changed, I realized that the person I trusted most was the one who destroyed me. The words left my mouth with a quiet steadiness I hadn't felt in months. Marcus stood on the porch, official papers still clutched in his hand, his confident smirk slowly fading as he processed what I had just said. "Actually, there's something important you both need to understand." He tilted his head, eyebrows raised in that condescending way he had perfected. "Oh, and what's that, Sophia? More excuses about how hard you worked? We already know the story. You took care of Uncle. You deserve a pat on the back, but the will is the will." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Instead, I stepped outside onto the porch, closing the front door gently behind me so Emma wouldn't overhear. The evening air was cool, carrying the faint scent of the strawberry plants we had nurtured together. This house, my house, stood solid and steady behind me, 10 years of my life and love woven into its walls. "No, Marcus," I said calmly, "this isn't about excuses, this is about facts. The house on Maplewood Lane was never part of Dad's estate. It was never his to give away in any will." Marcus let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Nice try, everyone knows this was Uncle's house. You let him live here rent-free, it became his home. Legally, it falls under the estate." I reached into the folder I had prepared weeks earlier and pulled out the first document, the original purchase agreement from exactly 10 years ago. My name was the only one listed as buyer. Every signature, every stamp, every line proved it. 10 years ago, I bought this house with my own money," I continued, my voice steady but laced with the weight of everything I had carried silently. "Every mortgage payment came from my account. Every renovation, every property tax bill, all mine. Dad's name was never on the deed, not once. He moved in because I invited him, because I wanted to take care of him. But ownership never transferred. Legally, this house has always been mine." Marcus's face shifted from amusement to confusion, then to something colder. Diane had stepped out of the car now and was walking up the path, her heels clicking sharply on the stone walkway. She stopped beside him, arms crossed, eyes narrowing. "You're bluffing," she said sharply. "Your father told me himself how much this place meant to him. He called it his legacy. He wanted it kept in the bloodline." I looked at her directly, the woman who had sat with my father in his final months, whispering influences I could only imagine. He may have believed that. Or perhaps he wanted to believe it. But belief doesn't change legal title. I have the clear deed, the mortgage records, 10 years of bank statements, everything. My lawyer has already reviewed it all. The house cannot be part of the estate because it was never his to bequeath. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Marcus flipped through the documents I handed him, his fingers moving faster as panic set in. Diane leaned in to look, her face draining of color. This can't be right," Marcus muttered. We had plans, the appraisal was scheduled, buyers were already interested. I felt a quiet wave of justice wash over me, not loud or triumphant, but deep and satisfying. All those nights I had spent crying, questioning my worth and my daughter's place in this family, had led to this moment. The assumption they had built their greed upon was crumbling right in front of them. "You both assumed the house was Dad's simply because he lived here," I said softly. I never corrected that assumption because I never imagined my own father would try to erase my daughter from his life. But now, you know the truth. Emma and I are staying right here, in the home I built for us. You are welcome to take whatever personal items of Dad's that the will actually covers. The savings account, the car, a few pieces of furniture if they're listed. But the house stays with us? Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked around the porch, the backyard, the windows glowing warmly from inside where Emma was safe and loved. For the first time, I saw real regret flicker across his face, not for hurting us, but for losing something he had already counted as his. "You're really going to do this?" he asked, his voice lower now. "After everything Uncle did for you? You're going to keep it all for yourself and her?" The way he said her, as if Emma were still an outsider, sent a fresh wave of pain through me, but it no longer broke me. It strengthened me. "I'm not keeping it all," I replied. "I'm keeping what has always been mine, what I paid for, what I protected while I cared for Dad every single day. Emma is my daughter, she is my family. And this house is where we heal, where we grow, and where we belong. If Dad truly wanted a bloodline legacy, he should have been honest about what belonged to whom while he was still here." Diane tried one last time, her tone shifting to something almost pleading. "Sophia, think about this. Contesting things could get messy. Legal fees, family drama, no one wants that. Maybe we can reach some kind of agreement. A percentage?" I shook my head slowly. "There's nothing to contest. The documents are clear. My lawyer will send formal notice tomorrow. Please don't come back to this house unless you're invited." They left shortly after, Marcus muttering under his breath and Diane shooting me one last resentful glance from the car. As their taillights disappeared down Maplewood Lane, I stood on the porch alone for a long time, letting the cool evening air wash over me. The weight I had carried since the will reading began to lift, not all at once, but in gentle waves. Inside, Emma was waiting in the living room, curled up on the couch with her stuffed rabbit. She looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes. "Mom, were they mad again?" I sat beside her and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "They were disappointed, sweetheart. But we're going to be just fine. This house is ours and no one can take it away. We're staying right here together." Over the following weeks, the consequences unfolded quietly but powerfully. Word spread through our small circle of family and longtime neighbors. Marcus had already told several relatives about his big plans for the estate, including selling the house and splitting an imagined windfall. Now those plans were collapsing. The embarrassment was palpable. At a distant cousin's birthday gathering I chose not to attend, I heard later that Marcus had grown unusually quiet when people asked about the house. Diane stopped posting her usual social media updates about honoring dear old uncle's legacy. Their carefully constructed story of rightful inheritance had been exposed as built on a false assumption. I didn't gloat, I didn't need revenge in the loud, dramatic sense. The justice was poetic enough. The very thing they had counted on, the house they assumed would make them rich, was the one thing my father could never legally give them. In trying to erase Emma because she was blood, they had lost the biggest asset they believed was theirs. For me, the real healing came in smaller, deeper moments. I started sleeping better. The nightmares where Dad looked at me with cold eyes and said, "She's not real family," began to fade. Instead, I found myself sitting on the porch swing more often, the same swing where Dad and Emma once read together. Sometimes I would swing gently and talk to him in my mind, not with anger, but with honest reflection. I loved you, Dad, I really did. But love doesn't mean I have to accept being erased or letting my daughter feel unwanted. I hope wherever you are, you understand that now. Emma began to bloom again. She planted new flowers in the backyard, bright yellow marigolds that reminded me of sunshine after rain. We painted her room a soft lavender color she had always wanted. On weekends, we baked cookies together, filling the kitchen with laughter and the sweet smell of vanilla. The silver locket still hung around her neck, but now it carried new meaning, not just a gift from Grandpa, but a reminder that some bonds are chosen and unbreakable. One quiet Sunday afternoon, we sat on the porch steps watching the sunset paint the sky in soft pinks and oranges. Emma leaned her head against my shoulder. Mom, do you think Grandpa is sorry? I thought about the question for a long time before answering. I think he was scared, sweetheart. Scared of change, scared of things not looking the way he expected. People sometimes make choices out of fear instead of love, but that doesn't change how much we loved him. And it doesn't change who we are, she nodded slowly. I still miss him sometimes, but I'm glad we get to keep the house. It feels like home. It is home, I whispered, hugging her tighter. And we're going to fill it with so much love that there's no room left for anyone's doubts. In the months that followed, I discovered a new version of myself, quieter, stronger, more protective of the light we had almost lost. I returned to work with renewed focus, even earned a small promotion I had once turned down to care for Dad. Emma joined a school drama club and shone in her first performance, her confidence growing with every rehearsal. We started new traditions: Friday movie nights with extra popcorn, Saturday morning garden time, Sunday porch talks where we shared our dreams for the future. The betrayers faced their own quiet consequences. Marcus's relationships with other family members cooled noticeably. People who once admired his take-charge attitude now saw the greed beneath it. Diane moved on to another client. But I heard through mutual acquaintances that her reputation as a trusted caregiver had taken a hit, whispers about how she had influenced an elderly man's final decisions for personal gain. None of it brought me joy in a cruel way, instead it brought a sense of closure. The world had seen the truth, even if only in small circles. Justice didn't need to be loud to be felt. Looking back now, I realize the deepest revenge wasn't taking back the house, though that was deeply satisfying. The real revenge was refusing to let their choices dim my light or steal my daughter's sense of belonging. It was choosing to thrive in the very home they thought they could claim. It was showing Emma day by day that family is not defined by blood on paper but by who shows up, who protects, and who chooses love even when it's hard. I finally understood. Sometimes the strongest revenge is living, thriving, and never letting anyone steal your light again. This house on Maplewood Lane still stands, its porch swing creaking gently in the breeze. The backyard blooms with flowers Emma and I planted together. The kitchen fills with laughter and the smell of Sunday roasts. And every evening when the sun sets, painting the walls in warm golden light, I look at my daughter and feel a profound gratitude. Family isn't who you're born to. Family is who chooses you and who you choose to keep no matter what. To anyone listening who has ever been told they're not real enough, not blood, not worthy, not family, I want you to hear this. Your worth was never theirs to measure. Your place in this world doesn't depend on someone else's will or their narrow definition of legacy. Protect your heart, protect your chosen ones, and build a life so full of love that no document or betrayal can erase it. Thank you for walking through this story with me. If it touched something in your heart, know that you're not alone. We all carry pieces of heartbreak, but we also carry the power to heal and rise stronger. Until next time, hold onto your light. Cherish the family you choose, and never forget that sometimes the quietest justice is the most powerful of all.